Hello, Green Room. Today I've gone for the smartest giant in town. Hopefully there won't be any telephones ringing in this one or pages turning all by themselves. We'll see. George was a giant, the scruffiest giant in town. He always wore the same pair of old brown sandals and the same old patched up gown. I wish I wasn't the scruffiest giant in town, George said sadly. But one day, George noticed a new shop. It was full of smart clothes, so George bought a smart shirt, a smart pair of trousers, a smart belt, a smart stripy tie, some smart socks with diamonds up the side, and a pair of smart shiny shoes. Now I'm the smartest giant in town, George said proudly. George left his old clothes behind in the shop. He was about to go home when he heard a sound. On the pavement stood a giraffe who was sniffing sadly. "What's the matter?" George asked.
It's my neck, said the giraffe. It's so long and so very cold. Oh, I wish I had a long warm scarf.
"Cheer up," said George, and he took off his stripy tie. "It didn't match my socks anyway," he said, winding it round and round the giraffe's neck. It made a wonderful scarf. "Oh, thank you," said the giraffe. And as George strode towards home, he sang to himself, "My tie is a scarf for a cold giraffe, but look me up and down. I'm the smartest giant in town." George came to a river. On a boat stood a goat who was bleating loudly. "What's the matter?" asked George.
It's my sail, said the goat. It blew away in a storm. Oh, I wish I had a nice new sail for my boat.
"Cheer up," said George, and he took off his new white shirt. "I get called a duck anyway," he said, as he tied it to the mast of the goat's boat. It made a magnificent sail. "Thank you," bleated the goat, and as George strode on, he sang to himself, "My tie's a scarf for a cold giraffe, my shirt's on a boat as a sail for a goat, but look me up and down, I'm the smartest giant in town." George came to a tiny ruined house. Beside the house were lots of mice. They were all squeaking. "What's the matter?" asked George.
It's our house, squeaked the mother mouse. We're burned down and now we have nowhere to live. Oh, I wish we had a nice new house.
"Cheer up," said George, and he took off one of his shiny shoes. "It won't give me blisters anyway," he said. And the mice scrambled inside. It made a magnificent home. "Thank you," they squeaked. Now, George had to hop along the road, but he didn't mind, and as he hopped he sang, "My tie's a scarf for a cold giraffe, my shirt's on a boat as a sail for a goat, my shoe is a house for some little white mouse, but look me up and down, I'm the smartest giant in town." George came to a campsite. Beside a tent stood a fox who was crying. "What's the matter?" he asked. "It's my sleeping bag," said the fox. "Well, I dropped it in a puddle, and I wish I had a warm, dry sleeping bag." "Cheer up," said George, and he took off one of his socks with diamonds up the side. "It was tickling my toes anyway," he said, as the fox snuggled inside. It made a magnificent sleeping bag. Now, George hopped on, singing to himself, "My tie's a scarf for a cold giraffe, my shirt's on a boat as a sail for a goat, my shoe is a house for a little white mouse, one of my socks is a bed for a fox, but look me up and down, I'm the smartest giant in town." They got very cold foot though. Then George came to a big squelchy bog. Beside the bog stood a dog who was howling. "What's the matter?" asked George. "It's this bog," said the dog. "I need to get across, but I keep getting stuck in the mud. Oh, I wish there was a safe, dry path." Whilst George got up his sleeve this time. But he's wearing sleeves, of course. "Jerome," said George, and he took off his smart new belt. "Oh, it was squashing my tummy anyway," he said, and he laid it down over the bog. It made an excellent path. "Thank you," said the dog. Now the wind had started to blow, but George didn't mind. He hopped on, singing to himself. "My tie's a scarf for a cold giraffe. My shirt's on a boat as a sail for a goat. One of my socks is a bed for a fox. My belt helped a dog who was crossing a bog. But, oh, my trousers are falling down. I'm the coldest giant in town." And suddenly George felt sad and shivering, and not at all smart. He stood on one foot and thought, "I'll have to go back to the shop to buy more clothes." He turned around and he hopped all the way back to the shop, with one shoe missing, no less. That's got to hurt his foot. But when he got there, the shop was closed. "Oh no!" cried George, and he sank down on the doorstep, and a tear ran down his face. He felt as sad as all the animals he'd helped on his way home. But then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw a bag with something familiar poking out of the top. George took a closer look. "My gown!" he yelled. "My dear old gown and sandals!" George put them on. They felt wonderfully comfortable. "I'm the cosiest giant in town!" he cried, and he danced back home along the road. Outside George's front door stood all the animals he had helped. They were carrying an enormous present. "Come on, George," they said, "open it." George untied the ribbon, and inside was a beautiful gold paper crown and card. "Look inside the card, George," said the animals. So George put the crown on his head, opened the card, and inside it said, "Your tie is a scarf for a cold giraffe. Your shirt's on a boat for a sail for a goat. Your shoe is a house for a little white mouse. One of your socks is a bed for a fox. Your belt helped a dog who was crossing a bog. So here is a very fine crown to go with the sandals and gown of the kindest giant in town."